I am Dr. Kanakadurga, social work educator retired from PG Center of Andhra University. In this lesson, we are discussing the characteristics, features of an effective counselor. The most important characteristic feature of effective counselor is the counselor should be interested in fellow human beings. A liking and love for fellow human beings is very important. They have to spend a lot of time with them. They have to go through the pains and the troubles they have undergone during their lifetime. For all this, to explore the problems of the client, to understand them, to interpret them, and finally to solve them, they should have perceptual sensitivity. That means by looking at an individual, the counselor should be able to observe and understand the feelings and thoughts of an individual. The next most important characteristic feature is personal adjustment. Counselors generally, they are able to behave well in a counseling session, but the counselor is expected to be having good adjustment even outside sessions. Believes, that is, he believes in dignity and worth of the individual. That means he accepts the individual with all the limitations. Human beings, they have both strengths and weaknesses. The counselor has to accept both the strengths and weaknesses. He should give importance to the choices and decisions of the client. The client is capable of making decisions, is an independent individual. He can take decisions to reach his goal. And not only that, freedom and liberty. That means he should have full freedom to choose and to make decisions, and liberty to take up a particular course of action to reach the goal. Counselors should have cultural empathy. That means empathy to understand others' culture and appreciate. But he uses an integrated, that means a mixture of all, depending on the need to deal with the problems he will take. That we call an integrated approach. He will use an integrated approach with multicultural clients. Characteristics like competence, skill, and other traits which are required to become an effective counselor are discussed in this lesson. Objective. The objective of this lesson is to explain the characteristic features that are essential for an effective counselor. Characteristics of an effective counselor. Some specific characteristics of an effective counselor are: 1. Interpersonal skills. 2. Unconditional positive regard. 3. Non-judgmental attitude. 4. Personal beliefs, attitudes, and competence. Empathy and understanding. 6. Personal soundness. 7. Mastery of technique. 8. Ability to understand and work with social system. 9. Counselor as an agent of social control. 10. Ensuring confidentiality. 11. Objectivity. 12. Research oriented. And 13. Openness to learning and inquiry. 1. Interpersonal skills. Establishing professional relationship with a client is emphasized by all approaches to counseling. By practicing listening, reflecting the feelings, and the counselor will develop professional relationship with the client. By creating an emotional bond with the client, an agreement over goals is achieved and tries to understand the tasks that are to be performed to reach the goals with which the therapeutic relationship is strengthened. Rogers believed that the therapeutic relationship is facilitated by core conditions of empathy, congruence, and acceptance of the counselor. Emotional bond between the counselor and the client is formed from the creation of shared feeling language in a way of talk allows the expression of feelings of the client. Here, the voice quality of the counselor also plays an important role. The counselor, basing on the factors like social class, age, gender, ethnicity, she or he must be able to adjust her or his style or approach in his or her dealings. 2. Unconditional positive regard. Effective counselors communicate caring and respect for the persons whom he is helping. The opposite of caring is indifference. Counselors are not indifferent to present and future of his or her clients. Effective counselors agree to offer time and energy to the clients and for the future well-being. To respect a client means to hold the person with regard and esteem and having favorable attitude towards his or her talent and will not think of him as her as inferior because of the limitations the client is having. The counselor believes in client's learning capacity and often encourages him to move towards maturity. The counselor shows his positive attitude in listening and in active involvement what all the client talks. The counselor respects the cultural factors and also never ignores the importance of social factors. Effective counselors are not arrogant and they will not feel superior when they are working with the clients. Professional relationship is possible if only the counselor is accepting the feelings regardless of what feelings are expressed by the client. In other words, the counselor has to accept the client certain feelings and deny others. This unconditional acceptance allows the client feel safe and secure within the relationship and to express his deeper feelings. The client starts understanding this deepening self. He or she will understand those aspects that are false and those that are real. That means the client will understand how she or he is living a false life as a result of past conditions of worth that were imposed. All therapists should strive to achieve unconditional positive regard throughout and for all sessions. 3. Non-judgmental attitude. Effective counselors attempt to understand the behavior of their clients without imposing value judgments. Generally, people in our society attribute value judgment to the behavior of others, basing on their own standards. The value judgment seriously hampers the purpose of counseling. Counselors work hard to avoid judgmental attitude. Instead, they accept the client's behavior and try to understand the reasons for their behavior. The counselor develops opinion about the client and tries to understand how far the client's behavior is effective or non-effective in reaching the desired goal. The counselor will never classify clients' values as good or bad. Effective counselor develops an in-depth understanding of human behavior. They believe that all behavior is purposeful and is goal-directed. Number 4, personal beliefs, attitudes, and competence. Effective counselors should possess similar belief system or ways of making sense of the world. The counseling process is based on the assumption that counselors are able to help people as they view the client's problem in a particular way. Otherwise, different perspective might hinder growth or learning of the client. Competence in the area of personal beliefs and attitudes consists of having certain ways of observing the world, but also of having accurate self-awareness regarding their counseling with their belief and attitudes will make the client understand that he or she accept his contrasting perspective. Generally, exhausted clients come to the agency to consult the counselor for an advice in the problematic situation. But counselors stand that client should take his decision will make the client unhappy. The counselor has to enable the client to gain capacity to deal with the present as well as the future problem. 4. Empathy and understanding. The counselors try to understand client, keep himself in client's position. The counselor, without losing his or her identity, involves in the problem of the client. Empathy involves two major skills: perceiving skills and communication skills. Perceiving skills implies active listening for the themes, issues, personal constructs, and emotions. Themes means view of oneself, attitude towards others, consistent interpersonal patterns, fear of failure, and search for personal power. Issues are questions of conflicts with which client is struggling to understand his or her emotions of the client, such as elation, joy, anger, anxiety, and sadness. Personal constructs are unique thoughts an individual uses to process information, give meaning to life events, and explain cause and effect relationship and take decisions. In communication skills of empathy, counselor tells the client that his or her meaning and feelings have been understood. If counselor is not communicating after careful listening, the client may not know the mind of the counselor. Sometimes clients misinterpret counselors' lack of response as negative judgment. Empathy has a number of desired effects. 1. The energy required to listen actively expresses the care and concern of the counselor. 2. The feedback that comes from the counselor will help the client understand his problem. 3. Responding from the counselor establishes expectations about the nature of counseling experience and the counselor work for the client's self-discovery. 4. The empathetic understanding gives the client that he or she are safe in communicating the details of their problems. 5. The client realizes that the counselor is offering expertise with special skill and gains the sense of optimism about future sessions. Personal soundness. The actual technique employed by counselors are less important than unique character and personality of the therapists themselves. The selection of technique and the theories will depend on the personality of the counselors. The more the counselors accept and values himself, the more effective he or she will be in helping the clients. The clients will come to know and appreciate themselves. Good counselors have high level of emotional adjustment and greater capacity for self-disclosure. Many counselors during their training undergo personal therapy for their growth in the direction of adjustment and openness. Further, personal therapy will increase confidence in them and also help a counselor to use self in relationship with clients. Thus, personal therapy provides self-awareness. 7. Mastery of techniques. Counselors totally will not follow the dictates of any one treatment approach, but creatively modifying techniques to meet the needs of client. The counselor should be aware of the operations of social system. 8. The counselor as an agent of social control. One of the ways in which counselor can exert power over the clients is by acting as agents of social control. In most situations, counselors strive to be as client-centered as possible. But in certain settings, the approach taken by counselor or the attitude of the counselor towards client is defined in terms of external demands. The cases of drugs and alcohol users and sexual offenders referred by the court to the counseling agencies, and also cases referred from workplaces, colleges, or dealt by counselors. Here, the counselors are operating as agents of social control, definitely plays an important role from the role of a psychiatrist, where the client is given compulsory treatment, imposing custodial care. True therapy is possible with absolute voluntary participation of the client, even in the absence of institutional control. In every counseling encounter, there is some element of social control, but the counselor has to see that it will not disturb the purpose of counseling. 9. Ensuring confidentiality. Counselors under no circumstances should disclose the information pertaining to the life of the client. She or he is not supposed to give any information to anybody without the permission of the client. 10. Unbiased or objectivity. The counselor has to be unbiased when they are listening, assessing, or diagnosing the content given by the client. The counselors, while they are counseling certain special groups like HIV positive persons, homosexuals, care should be taken while understanding, assessing, analyzing, objectively helping them without any prejudice. Research oriented. Counselors' practice is based on theories available, knowledge base. They have to read books, journals, and other case records available and make themselves update in knowledge and also add their practical experience to the theory. 12. Openness to inquiry. The counselors during personal and professional attainment, they have to go through these distinct stages. 1. Roles, relationship pattern, and emotional needs established in childhood. 2. The decision to become a counselor. 3. The experience of a trainer. 4. Coping with the hazards of the practice. 5. Expressions, creativity in counseling role. Effective counselors are able to reach in or reach out. Counselors do a lot of thinking about their actions, feelings, value commitments, and motivation. They continuously strive for self-examination, self-understanding. They are aware of the feeling and also the source. They can help others think openly and non-defensively about themselves and others. Effective counselors also like and respect themselves and do not use the people. They are trying to help satisfy their own needs. Effective counselors feel secure about them and thus do not depend on others for recognition and acknowledgement. Counselors is experiencing personal stress which will intervene with his or her work. He or she should refer the case to somebody till he comes out of it. Burnout happens when they focus only on their work all the time, as the job itself is more stressful. Those circumstances of stress put counselor at risk of losing perspective on their effectiveness and their clients. To avoid burnout, counselors must take time away from work to take care of them. They should take their support system and get a clearer perspective of their professional work and should become as stress-free as possible. Summary. The counselor requires certain characteristic features in order to be effective in his work. That is, interpersonal skills he or she should have interpersonal skills, unconditional positive regard, non-judgmental attitude, competence, empathy, soundness, mastery over techniques, confidentiality, and objectivity. So these characteristics a counselor should have. The role of counselor involves skills and competencies. Counselor requires having good interpersonal relations. Counselor should accept the client that he or she has capacity for change. Counselor should have cognitive flexibility and ability to conceptualize. Counselor should have enough self-awareness, should be tolerant to anxiety. Counselor should be able to use specific techniques appropriately. Here are some questions for lesson number 4. Question number 1. What do you mean by unconditional positive regard? Question number 2. What is non-judgmental attitude? Number 3. Explain the term confidentiality. Question number 4. What is objectivity? Question number 5. Explain the counselor's role as an agent of change. References. Patterson E Lewis, 2000. The Counselling Process, Bangalore, Eastern Press. MacLeod, John, 2000. An Introduction to Counselling, New Delhi, Rawat Publications. Newkring, Edward, 2012. Counselling Theory and Practice, New Delhi, Cengage Learning India Private Limited.